and welcome to our first webinar after the summer break. We are very happy to see you all here tonight, and we're very excited about our speaker, Natasha. She joined us here, and she is a recruiter. She works for one of the biggest recruitment companies in the Netherlands. She will talk a little bit about herself later, and also she's going to share all her ins and outs of how to set up a profile, what is important with the LinkedIn, and how to make your CV more attractive for the recruiters. So, Natasha, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. And the audience is yours.
I'm just opening the slides, but it's not in yet on the other computer, but it might be soon. So let me just start with introducing myself then shortly. As mentioned, I'm a recruiter for Robert Walters. We're a global recruitment agency. And before that, I used to study psychology, and I have done some work within psychology as well, focusing on mental health and then specifically on addiction problems. This of course is very different from recruitment, but the likewises are that you're still constantly working with people, finding out where they want to go, finding out what motivates them, and how they want to make a next step. And that's of course the same with all people being dependent on subsistence or maybe dependent on the work you do. I've been working at Robert Walters for over 3 years. I did just quit my job, but I have done it with a lot of enthusiasm, and I'm still very happy about what I've done there. And I'm hoping that I can tell you a bit more today about the things that Victoria just said. I'm going to see if I can open the slides now, because it did come in. And the things I'll be focusing on are, of course, LinkedIn, as mentioned, how to put your CV, but also the way we interview our candidates and what the clients focus on, because we have certain ways of interviewing, and knowing the way we interview can help you in giving the answers that will be good in finding your next job. Let's see. Now I just have to share. Can you see the screen now?
No, I still see you.
No, not yet.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now we
see
that.
it.
Sorry for the delay on my part.
No worries.
Yes, how to land your dream job. All right, well, we'll start with the index. I mentioned a few of the things that we'll be going through today already. I'll also tell you a bit about what I focus on meeting new clients, because of course, that's also very important. And the techniques I mentioned just now are the behavioral interview questions and the STAR methodology that we'll be going through, which hopefully will help you in your next interview and finding your next job. So let's start with LinkedIn. LinkedIn, of course, is a very big institution, and it's very difficult to see what's behind it because it's all based on algorithms. And in that part, it makes it more difficult for us to understand what goes in that algorithm. And within LinkedIn, as a recruiter, it's not only the algorithm that's important, but of course also the behavior of the recruiter. So what do we put in there, which makes it interesting for you to see what comes out and on the other hand. So the first most important thing that you see when you go on LinkedIn is a profile headline. You have, I think, about 120 characters to put in there. So try to what your specialization is and what role you're pursuing if that's a new role that you're looking for. A lot of people tend to keep this quite broad, but the more specific you make it, the more keywords you put in there, the better you can be found on LinkedIn by recruiters like myself. This is also the main thing that goes into the algorithm that LinkedIn uses. So it's not only the behavior of the recruiter that's important in the profile headline, but also the LinkedIn algorithm takes it very highly. Then the next thing, which is most important, are the recent job titles. A search engine expert who researched LinkedIn search functions during his own job search said, instead of project manager, I might say project manager, e-commerce, customer experience for checkout, cart, and post order. You wouldn't not do that maybe from yourself, but the more keywords that are in your job title, again, the better you get hit in a search. Also in the algorithm, it's made up like this, that the more the job titles and the skills you put in there are more dependent than if you put skills in the other commerce. Let me check, I have some notes on that. Oh, sorry, you have the skills and keywords that are listed in skills and endorsement, where a lot of people think that that's very important to put in on your LinkedIn. That's actually not true. You can better put it in the job title and the description of the job title within keywords. Then also put in your location, because all the recruiters put in their location and they need to know that you live in the area that they're looking for, because a lot of clients just decline you if you live too far away. Then something that a lot of people don't know as well is that you can change your profile URL. So if you put your profile URL of your LinkedIn on your CV, it can look very strange if it says, well, for instance, at mine, Natasja.Nieuwenhuis, and then a lot of numbers behind it. I could, for instance, put in Natasja.Nieuwenhuis.recruiter, so that if you add it in on your CV, it looks more, well, professional instead of a range of numbers, just like, well, maybe you used to have a Hotmail address with natasjaloveskitties.com@hotmail.com. Well, that doesn't look professional anymore. You changed that a while ago, probably as well. And then also your connections. Make sure you make connections with everyone you work with, people you meet, because the more connections you have in common with your recruiter, the more likely you are to get in a high search. So that's also very important. So this is all very technical, of course. In the LinkedIn, the things I'm going to mention for your CV are also important, and I'm going to go through that next. Get someone to read your CV is the first point that's on there, because a lot of people don't know even that if you send an email with a lot of text in there, well, you have to imagine it like this. If I put out a job advert and I get 200 reactions, I'm going to go through the reactions that are clear to me, where I can easily go through their CV and where I don't have to do too much work. Of course, you have to do work anyways, but it's make it easy for the recruiter or the company that you're sending your CV to. So keep your cover note short and sharp to save the reader time, and the summary of your skills and experience that match the job requirements. So for example, if you're applying for a business controller function, make sure that you mention a short summary with why you match the job description. So I can now immediately, when I read the email, oh, this is a good candidate that matches the job description, I'm going to read through his CV. Also, a simple thing is make sure you spell the name right of the person you're addressing. Make sure that you only get a one-time shot of introduction, and I understand that you might go through a lot of job applications and send them to a lot of people, but you wouldn't know how many times people spell my name wrong when they send me an email. And then, of course, I'm a bit less likely to go through your CV, because if you don't take the good enough time to set up a proper email, then why would I take the time to go through your CV as properly? Then if you get someone to read your CV, which is step one, then comes step two. The first thing that you have, of course, is opening the CV. If you see a CV which is totally messed up, totally unclear, it's very hard for me to read, then I'm less likely to take you into consideration for the job. Not only because I can't read it well, but it also tells me something about how you handle certain things, as if you can't put a good spelling and grammar and layout for your CV, how can I trust you to send me to one of my important clients? I put a lot of effort and energy in maintaining good client relationships. I don't want to send someone a CV of someone I don't really trust. So putting together a good CV which has a good layout and quality spelling and grammar makes me trust you to send your CV to my clients. Then, of course, we first scan through your CV. So I spend maybe 6 to 10 seconds scanning the CV for the essential skills and knowledge that I'm looking for in the job. So if you're applying for a specific job, you could also consider adjusting your CV to that, or maybe highlighting the parts that are important for this job that you're currently applying to. So that as I scan through it, I can easily see, oh, those are the parts that are applicable to the current job. Let's see. If your CV doesn't match this quick scan, I'm not really likely to go in through it more deeper. If I don't see on a quick scan basis, you're probably gonna match the job. If you do get that, then I'm gonna go dig deeper and into your CV. So then you're gonna be sure that I'm gonna go through all of it. I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna see if it makes sense to me, if there are gaps in there that are explainable or not, if there are numbers and facts in there which I can check, which recruiters really like. If there are numbers in there which can prove that you have done a 30% reduction in costs, or that you have upped the earnings, that those are all things that we like to see, because that, again, we can sell to our clients. It sounds a bit cheap maybe, but you are our product and we want to sell you to our clients. Of course, it's all humane, and there's a lot of people behind the CV, but the CV is one of the first things that we go through. So there again, this is the chance for you to sell yourself to us. In your CV, I also focus on what's in the job. So besides what is the job title, I want to know who you work with, who did you report into, what kind of programs did you work with, and is there any specific projects that you did. These are all things I would like to see back in each role that you did on your CV. Some people tend to put all their system knowledge on one line. I wouldn't recommend that. I would really recommend putting each system that you've worked with each role, because it's kind of dependent on where did you do what kind of system. So if you used SAP at a pharmaceutical company, it might be different than if you've used that at an FMCG company. So really be specific in all the things that you've done there. We want to know which position you had within the organization and the overall goal of your role. which people you interact with, also within the company, managers, but also if you handled maybe certain types of suppliers or customers, and what kind of reports did you produce? And then if you did produce reports, what kind of reports? Because reports could be about anything. Are they about the working hours? Are they about sales? Are they about logistics? I really want to know what kind of things you've done specifically. And this is, of course, most important in your most current role. So I would also recommend you to be a bit more extensive in your the role that you did most recently, because there is, for us, the most key in where you're going to next. But again, if you look at the job you're applying to, you could see maybe if you did that in other jobs, adjust your CV to the specific job application and mention the things that are important for that job. As I said, also, we really like numbers and facts. So when writing your CV, try to add some measurable achievements. This also comes back again later in the presentation when I talk about the STAR methodology. There again, you can see also that STAR methodology to use it in your CV, but I'll explain that a bit more later on. Explain gaps. Well, I mentioned it. We want to know a reason for everything. So if you dropped out of school, but you had a good reason, tell us on your CV, because otherwise we're going to fill in that assumptions for ourselves. And we can't make assumptions as recruiters, but we do because we're just human. And the more you try to make sure that we can't make any assumptions, the better it is. So if you've took a year off to take care of your mother or to travel the world, that's all fine, but we need to know what you did in those gaps, because otherwise we're going to think you just sit there at home without a job, not being able to work or not being able to find a job. Questions at the end, right? Okay. Then, what do I focus on when meeting a new candidate? There are, of course, a lot of things I focus on when meeting new candidates. And the first of them is presentation. How do you walk into the room? How do you introduce yourself? What is your handshake like? Just a first presentation. Are you dressed properly? If you are not dressed properly, why is it? I know I one time had a guy over who was on his motorcycle, and he explained to me, normally I'm in a suit, but I wasn't going to make it due to the traffic jam, so I came in, and then it's all fine. If you have an explanation, it's fine, but I need to know why your presentation is as it is. Then I'm going to, of course, focus on the skill set. What is the skill set of the candidate? And again, I will tell you later on how I focus on finding out what your skill set is. Personality. Also very important. Sometimes people think, oh, it's just a recruiter and this is not the job interview, but we are the ones who are eventually going to introduce you to the client. So you have to make sure that your personality comes across as good with us. Most of us have been, or at least Robert Walters, been trained in the DISC, so in the color combination. So if a person is either red, yellow, blue, or green, and we're going to make an impression during the interview in which category you would fall. This also tells us something about how you could do your job. If you're very conscientious, you might be good with a job with a lot of specific numbers. Well, as if you're very dominant, you wouldn't know, maybe you're a good leader. Then enthusiasm. Sometimes people come in and they are rushed and they are tired and they are yawning and not interested. It's very important how you come across. And I'm even amazed sometimes that I have to tell this, but I've done a lot of interviews in the years, and I think a lot of people could have used these tips. Then preparation. Of course, the main part for us is preparing your interview. So I want to go through your CV before you're there. I'm looking at your LinkedIn before you're there. I'm going to see what kind of information I can find about you, at what companies have you worked. If I don't know the company, I'm going to look into the company so I know what kind of questions I can ask you. But on the other hand, I would like to see that favor returned. So it's nice to have someone who's a bit prepared when they come in, if it's for a specific job interview that they've already looked into the company, if it's just a coffee to get to know me. It's nice that to let me know that you've done some research about me as well, because it tells me something about how you will be at the client as well. So I would definitely recommend going onto the website of the company or the LinkedIn page of the person you're meeting, even if it's just a recruiter. Then the behavioral interview questions. These are the questions that I mentioned earlier as well, where you really focus on more personality traits than just on the hard skills. And what I also focus on, which isn't really mentioned here, but in the entire interview, is past, present, and future. So I want to know, what did you do in your past? What is it you're doing now? And what are you going to look forward to in your future? What jobs are you pursuing? What do you want out of life? And what I find very important, who are you besides the CV? So I try always to find something about who are you, what do you like in life, that's also because I want to see how you act and how you talk about something if you're not talking about your job. So sometimes I can see a sparkle in someone's eyes when they are talking about doing a sort of sport that they're doing. And if that's a very different sparkle than if you're talking about your job, then I might get the idea that you don't really like your job and you might need to do something else that does give you that sparkle, because I really believe that working in your sparkle or in the thing that you like best is going to give you the best opportunities and is going to give the company that you work for the best profit of yourself as well. So be aware as well that you're working and doing something that you really like. In the interviews, let's see. So I already mentioned show preparation, and this is really what I just spoke about is when you're meeting a recruiter, and this could be more focused on when you're meeting a client. So show preparation. This is for the client. This could be very broad, way more intensive than I just mentioned when you're meeting me. So besides focusing on his LinkedIn page, maybe you can find something that he's done via Google, but also show preparation. Make sure that you know everything about the company. What are their year numbers? What are their goals? What are they focusing on? Where do they want to go? What is their unique selling points from other companies? So that you can make sure that if you know this, you can seem very interested at the company. And this is also important. Express that interest when you're at the company. Make sure that you're showing that you really want this, that you're interested, that you've looked it up, that you want to do this. It's very simple, but people often seem to forget, especially currently we're kind of working in a candidate-driven market is what we call it. So there are mostly more good candidates available than there are jobs. So the candidates are in a luxury position where they can choose from a variety of jobs. But it doesn't mean that you can just choose. You still have to prove that you really want this. And also for yourself, it's very good to express that interest, because then you can feel for yourself as well if it's genuine or not. And if you've really done your research before you're going to a job interview, then you can ask those questions that you find important. What is it that you want from them? And it's not just about them wanting you. You also have to see, is this a company that I like? Is this a cultural fit for me? Do they do things that I like? Is there growth available for me? And the only way you can find that out is by asking questions during the interview. And I always find it very refreshing when a candidate asks a lot of questions, because it shows a lot of interest and a lot of eagerness to learn as well. And that's also always a very good quality to show. Then demonstrate skill set. Well, besides the hard skills, you can of course also show that you have good presentation skills, good communication skills within the interview. But it's also important to express the hard skills that you've done. So without bragging, you can tell your accomplishments and make sure that you tell these accomplishments in more than, oh, I did this, but be very specific about what you've done, how you've done it, and what it has accomplished in your previous company. What has it added? What was the added value? Or even when you made a failure, maybe what did you learn from it then? How did it make you grow if you did make a mistake? And it's important that you can show the client as well that you're able to grow from the mistakes you've made. And being able to talk about mistakes you've made is also very strong. You would maybe assume that it's weak to talk about mistakes you've made, but as long as you can show what you've learned from the mistakes you've made, I think it's a very strong and good ability and a good thing to show at an interview. Then make an impression. Make a good impression, of course, but make sure that you're there. If you're there, make sure you smile, make a good impression, give a firm handshake. And also by asking a lot of questions, you'll make an impression as well, because they will remember you, because they've talked about themselves as well. And what I always try to do during, well, even meetings, when I meet candidates or when I meet clients, is to see where's the common ground, and try to talk about the common ground when you're meeting the clients, because it's connecting with someone and making sure they remind you. And then, as I said, assess the culture. Make sure for you it's a cultural fit. Make sure that you like the company. You can see even this in how he talks about his colleagues, or how he talks about managing people. If you're meeting your possible new manager, ask him how he manages his people in the team. Ask him what he finds important in relationships on the working grounds, of course. These are all kind of things that you can do to make sure that you're really applying to a job where you want to work. Then the behavioral interview questions. The behavioral interview questions require candidates to share examples of specific situations they've been in where they had to use certain skills. So according to the Society of Human Resource Management, the answers should provide verifiable, concrete evidence as to how a candidate has dealt with issues in the past. In short, it's a way to let your past work performance prove what you're capable of doing in the future for this potential employer. You can get these behavioral interview questions on a certain skill set. So you can see these on the screen, the teamwork, client-facing skills, ability with time management skills, communication skills, and motivation and values. I'll go through them each shortly, so you can know what kind of questions you can expect, for example, on these behavioral questions. For teamwork, you want a short story that illustrates your ability to work with others under challenging circumstances. So think team conflict or difficult project constraints or clashing personalities. Talk about a time where you had to work closely with someone whose personality was very different from yours. Or I could, for example, ask you, give me an example of a time you faced a conflict while working on a team. How did you handle that? Those are questions where we can find out how your teamwork is and if you're able or how you work with other people. And it's good to have some answers prepared on questions like this so that you can have immediate answers if they ask you something. So you have some prepared answers. For client-facing skills, a lot of us will be, of course, also facing clients. And it's for us very important to know, how are your client-facing skills? If you interact with clients, how do you react? How do you sell? So those are questions you'll be seeing here. If you in a role interviewing for works with clients, you'll be ready for one of the following questions. This could be find an example of a time where you successfully represented your company or team and delivered exceptional customer service. Or describe a time when it was especially important to make a good impression on a client. How did you go about doing so? Or give me an example of a time when you did not meet a client's expectation. What happened? And how did you attempt to rectify the situation? Here we can find if you can interact with clients well. And that's, of course, in a lot of sales jobs important, but also in a lot of other jobs where you are interacting with suppliers or other terms. I find it important in every job because I think within the company, you also have a lot of client-facing skills needed. Because if you're approaching your manager or if you're approaching someone else, I need to know that you are able to do so. So I'll often ask a lot of questions where I can find that you can communicate well, and it's of course basically stakeholder management, if you would maybe summarize it. Ability to adapt is another skill we tend highly on. Think of recent work crises you successfully navigated. Even if your navigation didn't feel successful at the time, find a lesser or silver lining you took from the situation. Tell me about a time where you were under a lot of pressure. What was going on and how did you get through it? Describe a time when your team or company was undergoing some change. How did that impact you? How did you adapt? There's a Dutch saying for it, een kat in het nauw maakt rare sprongen. I'm going to try to translate it. People do crazy things in crazy situations, or when they're in situations where maybe they feel like things could go wrong. How you act in that situation is for me very important to know, because if you can still keep a cool mind in a critical situation, then I know that you are good, and you have a good ability to adapt, especially to stress. So again, think of some specifics that you've had in these situations and make sure you have an answer ready for when you go on an interview and they ask you about something like this. So if the company, for example, is shrinking and you're afraid to lose your job, how do you react to that situation? Are you going to make sure that you stand out and that you do your job more specific or better? And tell the person you're interviewed by these examples. This again also for time management skills. I have some questions that we could ask there. Let's see, tell me about a time you had to be very strategic in order to meet all your top priorities, or describe a long-term project that you manage. How did you keep everything moving along in a timely manner? So for specific jobs, this is more important than other jobs, but for everyone, it's important to know how to prioritize. How do you make sure that you do the most important things first and meet your deadlines without burning out and going home crying because you didn't manage? Which of course happens to the best of us. Communication skills is again one of the things we are very focused on. You probably won't have any trouble thinking of a story for communication questions, since it's not only part of most jobs, it's part of everyday life. However, the thing to remember here is to also talk about your thought process or preparation. Give me an example of time when you were able to successfully persuade someone to see things your way at work, or describe a time when you were the resident technical expert. What did you do to make sure everyone's able to understand you? This is also something I often express within candidate interviews, that the easier you can explain something to me, the better I know you will be in explaining it to others as well. Because if you can talk about a very difficult thing, but explain it very easy, it's, I think it shows off with highly intelligent people, making something very difficult, very simple. And then, of course, motivation and values are things we are looking for in the interviews that we do with candidates. A lot of seemingly random interview questions are actually attempts to learn more about what motivates you. So your response would ideally address this directly, even if the question wasn't explicit about it. Tell me about your proudest professional accomplishment. Describe me a time when you saw a problem and took the initiative to correct it rather than waiting for someone else to do it. This doesn't show me the proudest professional accomplishment you actually made, but it tells me what are you most proud of, or what is something that you think you shouldn't wait for someone else to do it. So that tells me something about your motivation and the values that you have. And again, for different companies, you apply for different motivations, and different values are important, but I need to know which motivations and values are important for you to make a good match with a company that matches your motivation and values. Then the last slide of this presentation, I do have a lot of information with this slide, but it's the STAR methodology, and it's an acronym for situation, task, action, and result. And this is the way you answer the behavioral interview questions, but this is also a way that you could use to explain your CV more broadly. So, or specifically, not broad, specific. You use the situation to set the scene and give the necessary details of your example. So your goal here is to paint a clear picture of the situation you were in and to emphasize its complexity so that the result you touch on later seems that much more profound. Keep things concise and focus on what's undeniably relevant to your story. So people tend to go either put in information that's really not important in the situation. You really need to make sure that you only put information in there that's relevant and that's necessary. So don't make it too broad, but also do make sure that you have the relevant information to sketch the situation you were in well. Then comes the task. You describe what your responsibility was at that situation. People tend to mistake the task and the action sometimes because they seem similar, but the task is actually just the responsibility. And the action is what you exactly did. So explain what steps you took to address the task. So this could be that the task is to raise margins with 30%. But what did you do to raise that task? What did you do to raise that margins? What are the things you did? And that's the action. In the task, you're telling the story for a reason because you had some sort of core involvement in it. This is the part of your answer when you make the interviewer understand exactly where you fit in. This can easily get confused with action. However, this piece is dedicated to giving specifics of what your responsibilities were in the particular scenario, as well as any objective that was set for you, before you dive in what you actually did. Then the action explains exactly what step you took to address it. Now that you've given the interviewer a sense of what your role was, it's time to explain what you did. What steps did you take to reach that goal or solve that problem? Try to resist the urge to give a vague or glossed over answer like, so I worked hard on it, or I did some research. This is your chance to really showcase your contribution and what's it worthy of some specifics. Dig in deep and make sure that you give enough information about exactly what you did. Did you work with a certain team, use a particular piece of software, form a detailed plan? Those are the things I or the interviewer wants to know. And again, you can put these things in your CV as well. So sketch the situation, describe the task, your actions, and then the results. So share what outcomes you achieved. This is your time to shine and explain how you made a positive difference. The final portion of your response should share the results of your action you took. Of course, the results better be positive or it wasn't a story you should be telling. No interviewer will be dazzled with the answer that ends with, and then I got fired. So does that mean you can tell stories about problems or challenges? No. But even if you're talking about a time you failed or made a mistake, make sure you end on a high note by talking about what you learned or the steps you took to improve. This is, I think, the most important thing I can give you today, the STAR methodology, because if you learn to talk in this way, the situation, task, action, and result during interviews, it's very clear in your communication. So again, the things we mentioned earlier in being good with communication and time management skills, ability to adapt, if you give those questions, answers in this STAR methodology, it's really clear and it shows a very good result. It's also easy to recognize questions which you can answer with the STAR methodology. It's always starting with, tell me about a time when, or what do you do when, or have you ever, or give me an example of, or describe. This is very easy to recognize these questions, and it's good to brainstorm a few examples of particular success in your previous job so you can use those in the interview using this STAR framework. And then that was my presentation for today. I hope it was of use to you. And if you want, I still have time to answer some questions.
Super, thank you, Natasha. A lot of good information. So it's time for Q&A. Any ladies who have questions to Natasha? We have somebody on chat. Kathy says that was great. Thank you, Natasha. Thanks, Kathy.
Hi.
Come on, ladies, don't be shy.
Hi,
here's
Laura
the question.
Speaking, so I was on mute.
Oh, hi. Yeah, hi.
Yeah, it's okay? Do you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay, hi. I have a question on the CV.
I can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, I think we lost you.
You were telling us actually to put quite a bit. So very often it's like, okay, one-page CV. And in one-page CV, it's the question how to put all these details. So I was wondering, you know, I am 49. I have quite a lot of experience. So I try to to summarize. And at the end, there is not much space for a lot of details.
Yes, yes. Well, the most recent 5 years are the most important years that we look at. But then again, if you're looking to apply for a certain job where you have experience that's relevant in previous years, try to uh, make that explanation a bit broader, more specific, highlight those areas, and try to then make the other less relevant jobs for that application a bit more smaller or so that would be my advice. And of course, your most recent job should be also always very detailed because that's for us the most important one. And
But is like this one pager because I think Laurence is actually having a very important question. So is always one pager is the sort of the goal, or it doesn't actually, it can be 2 or 3?
well, I would prefer 2 or 3 actually, because again, as I said, I want to find information out of the CV. So if it's just a one pager, it doesn't have my preference, but I know that there are recruiters, and that's of course also a subjective thing because I don't like it a one pager because it's too short for me because I can't believe how you could put all your information on one page. But again, it is very clear. But if you do a one pager, then make sure that you do use the keywords that are important. Make sure that you use you put in there soft skills, but also maybe the software that you've worked with, the most important results that you had, and then try to see if you can put it in like that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Or
Yeah, you know, it's what you say, it's quite subjective because I used to have 3 pages and then, well, I was told, you know, it's much too long. I have a few seconds to go through, so I cannot go through 3 pages. And so that at the end, you sought to try to find a graphic way to represent things because you are, okay, we have no time. So yeah, it's very difficult to judge what you have to do actually. So
yeah, it's always difficult.
and
Can do is of course make a short summary at the beginning or one pager, and then behind it 2 pages that are maybe more bit extensive on the jobs that are relevant for the job you're applying to. So then you have the one pager for the people who like that, but then you in addition have the extra information on the job that's interesting for the recruiter that does like a bit more information than the one pager.
okay, thank you.
All right, then I see on the chat there is also a question from Kathy. She's asking, can you tell us about the CV? Do you look for a photo, nationality?
I normally don't look for a photo, but of course, when I go to someone's LinkedIn, I am very curious to find out that how the person looks like. We at Robert Walters, we don't send the CVs with photos, and we do send the nationality though. It's not something I judge by, but I can't, of course, tell if the client will or won't judge by the nationality. We are opposed to anyone who would judge on the nationality, of course, but we do put it on there. And for the photo, we don't put it on there. But I also always meet all my candidates in person before I send them to the client, so I know what they look like. But if I send my CV somewhere, I put my photo on it. That's a thing though.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So, what's the right way of talking about whether you have right to work in Europe or whether you need sponsorship? Like, is it needs to be directly disclosed, or like if I will have the right to
Well, if you are talking with a recruiter in between the agent or within the company, you can always talk to this about the recruiter. Recruiters should know if they are able to provide in sponsorships or not. So I would definitely advise you to discuss it with the recruiter. If you're directly going at it with the company, I would be open about it anyway, because a lot of the international companies really don't mind. Some people tend to do it as it's a very big deal, but it's mostly paperwork and it can be quite easily done. And you even see now that a lot of companies like people, for international companies, they want people who are from abroad or are from different countries because they want to diverse their company as well. So I wouldn't be scared of talking about it, but maybe at the end of the conversation, if you had a good interview, if you had a good first interview, then you can inform about it.
My question was, I understand that you can speak with them, but in the CV itself, to sort of like, I'm sure there is some sort of filter at the very first level when you just select the CVs, how to address it in the CV.
Oh, I don't think people really put it on their CV. I think it's more mentioned maybe in the email that you send your CV with. Or if you do have, I do know that people who apply for the tax ruler before would put it on their CV. And if you have a working permit, you can put it on there.
Okay.
All right. So basically, not to put on the CV, but better to put it in the email itself.
Yeah, and if you do have a working permit or already are applicable, then you can put it in the CV.
Okay. Claire, any more questions? All right, I do have a question on LinkedIn. I was a bit intrigued when you said about the job title, that in the job title you should also put the, let's say, also the skills, right?
Yeah.
So, because like I know for myself, what I have associate director, country controller. So then does it mean that I would also need to put some other stuff? I never thought about it actually.
Well, you cannot, for example, put in a country controller for which country are you the controller, and maybe some of the most important tasks that you have, because mainly with kind of titles, it varies so much within companies what your actual responsibilities are, that it's very difficult to make a distinction in that. And if the recruiters puts in as a search title, senior business controller, but actually want someone who does the country controlling for the UK, but maybe he doesn't really know what he's looking for, but he does put that in with the skills, then you do come up out of their search. And that's of course what you're trying to get when changing the title. For example, at IKEA, a business controller is called something very different than a business controller. They don't get lit on LinkedIn because you can't find them because they haven't got the name business controller in their job title. So it's very normal to put also the other maybe more frequent names or skills in there, so that you make sure that you get a lot of hits in LinkedIn.
Okay, it's a good one.
If I may, I also have a question. I saw an article where they were talking about the importance that the LinkedIn profile looked beautiful. So, for example, that the logos of your previous companies are placed.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a good idea. I tried to do it, but I don't know. A company 20 years ago went bankrupt, never had a website, doesn't have a logo. Is that really important?
Well,
how far should we go on this and making it beautiful?
yes. Well, it's of course it's better if you can do it, because if we click on a LinkedIn profile, then and when you look at it, it's nice that you can immediately see if someone worked at maybe PepsiCo or Heineken or some of the big brands. But if it's a very old company that went bankrupt 20 years ago, probably people won't recognize their logo anyway. So that's why you want the logos, because it immediately recognizes something. Oh, that's that company. That's interesting. I should click on that person's profile. But the important thing, more important thing on LinkedIn is that you're able to be finded, and that's only by words that you put in and not by the logo. So the logos is purely because it looks better. And that if I just click through and I see with my recruiter eye some of the logos that are important to me because the client is interested in people that used to work at these companies, then it's more easily spotted.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions?
I have a question actually, because you are a recruiter and you mentioned like we have to keep a good relationship with the recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
And in a long run, we can say, not only when we need a job. So what are the best practices there? We have to contact the recruiter once per year or send some update email about what we are doing, or what is the kind of get in touch you will advise to do?
Well, I would advise you to pick out a couple of recruiters, maybe 2 or 3 that you click with and that you like to keep updated with. So yeah, there are candidates that email me every 6 months, or I do interim. So there are a lot of candidates who frequently change jobs in that option. So each time they find a new job, they tell me about it. They tell me what they've done in their previous job, which gives me an update. It makes sure that the candidate for me is top of mind. And the candidates that are top of mind with me are the candidates that are more likely for me that I introduce them with the clients. So I would say you should contact your recruiter maybe every quarter or every half year, depending on if you're really looking for a new job or not. And if you're really looking for a new job, then try to contact them maybe even once a month. Just give them a short text if you've got the feeling I haven't heard from him or her in a while. Hey, how are you doing? I was wondering if there are any new job openings that could be interesting for me. If you try to keep in contact this way, it's more likely that you're top of mind with the recruiter and that you'll find a new job. But this could be in a way that you like. So you ask me how. Well, this could be Indeed via email or WhatsApp, or give a phone call, or drink a cup of coffee if you're in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
I definitely advise you to maintain a good relationship with your recruiter. But that's the baker selling bread, huh?
And you, then the other way around, did you maintain contact with some active, like you send emails to some people, like you like it?
Yes, well, we have a system we work with. It's called Profile, and when I've spoken to someone, I make notes of the conversation that we had, even if this was via WhatsApp or via email. I make sure that it's in our system, and then I put in a reminder. Mostly I put it in around every 6 months, or if I know that someone's job is ending in 3 months, I will put it in at 2 months so that I can make sure I give that person a call 4 weeks before the job ends and tell them how you're doing. Are you looking for a new opportunity, or is your assignment extended? And for permanent recruitment, it's the same. If you know that someone is looking around and looking for a new job, I will be in contact more frequently. and ask them how they're doing. If I know that they're going on a holiday, I can send them a text, sending them good wishes on their holidays. I really try to maintain that relationship because I believe that you have to trust each other and have to invest in each other so that you can make good decisions for each other as well, and that you don't get the feeling that you're being used as for a bonus.
Great. Any more questions? I see that we're a little bit over time. So maybe a last question for somebody.
I'm muted if you can hear me.
Yeah.
I didn't have a question, but I'm the first time I joined one of these webinars, and I wanted to just thank you for your time in this presentation. Much appreciated.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Well, then I hope you all enjoyed the presentation and you get some good tips out of it. If you do ever have any questions, you can always send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll try to respond. But I'll be going to Bali for some months, so it might be some time to respond.
Yeah, I would like to mention, Victoria, I would like to mention, like, tomorrow there is a workshop at RSM at the Women Club about how to maintain good relationships. So I think could be with the headhunter, could be with our competitors or our partners. And as well, we have a discount of 20% for the Amsterdam Capital House in 3 weeks in Amsterdam. We sent this discount link via our WhatsApp group, and we will send to the newsletter. So if you want to subscribe to our MentorWay newsletter, you can go to mentorway.wordpress.com, and then you will join, and we will send this recording and the link to the workshop tomorrow in RSM and the discount for the Amsterdam Capital House.
And I would like to add something to what Jara said now. I'm absolutely delighted of this evening because the content was terrific, Natasha. Thank you so much. The audience was great, interactive, being served. And now, as Jara says, we have discount to go and we are invited to another event. This event is for free. We just ask you one thing. Well, 2 things. I ask you 2 things. Drop us an email with a testimonial. Tell us how you like it and how it served you so that more women come. And actually in the same vein, invite your classmates, other alumnus of different generations. We want to serve more women because we want more women to be powerful, to be at those decision tables. We want more women to be there and to be making changes in businesses everywhere. So please help us out. Share the love and drop a testimonial to us. You know where to find us.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Blanca, for the last words. And thank you, Natasha, for tonight.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you here. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Bye.
Thank you.